Welcome back to Be the Change podcast with me, Stephanie Howlett, CEO of Diversity NL. Have a listen as we explore real life, vulnerable topics on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Become awakened, create culture of inclusion, be brave, have impact by being an ally. Explore how you can be the change that you always wanted to be. We respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the island of Uktamaguk as the ancestral homelands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. We'd like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatukavut and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We open our hearts and minds as we strive for respectful relationships with all First Peoples of this province. We search for collective healing and true reconciliation as we honor this beautiful land together and commit ourselves to being stewards who will respect the cultures, traditions, and ceremonies of all who call it home. So welcome back to Be the Change podcast. We have a very special guest today with us. We have Morgen Mills. So Morgen is the former member of the Canada Women's Chess team. She lives in and works in Labrador as a publisher, a consultant, and a co-owner of Brack and Brine. She's also writing her PhD dissertation in Labrador literature through Memorial University. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get into a little bit about you, a little bit about where you're living to, what you're doing, and what that looks like.
Well, I think you kind of answered all those questions just a second ago in that intro. I'm Morgan, and I live in Goose Bay. I've been here for 16 years now, originally from Ontario, but this is home now. And we together with my business partner, good friend Mark Turner, I own a company called Brack and Brine. So we're a consultant, we're a publisher, we do books. This is the most recent one. And we do kind of consulting work. So we're involved with records. We like to say we connect people and information. So that's the publishing piece, is bringing information. But then a lot of the consulting work and archival development is we like working with records. So getting the value out of the information that's already there. So that's kind of the business side of things, and a whole lot of digitizing too. But otherwise, I'm a chess player, and I guess I'm on here because I'm a member of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, and proud to be so, and proud to be a guest on your podcast.
Woo! I think all that's worth celebrating, right? Looking at how that looks like for us. So I guess I start the podcast because I wanted people to look at what we're doing inside our province and outside our province to be small pieces of change. And I think when you look at you and the history that you're making and the things that you're doing, it's change. It's change in the world for good. The ways that we're embracing ourselves authentically, right? So, you're embracing yourselves authentically, and I want to talk a little bit about chess, what that looks like for you as a chess player, and some of the barriers and some of the obstacles that you've come up against.
Sure. I've played chess sort of all my life. I was probably 3 or 4 when I started playing, but I was in Ontario. And I went through a phase, as many sort of teenagers do, of obsession. And in my case, obsession happened to be with chess. It could have been with any number of things, but it was with chess. So I played it all the time back then. And chess was kind of life for a while. And so a lot of my dear friends from those years were made through chess. And a lot of my social connections, even if they're not, close friends, they're still people that you're kind of in your circle, or you kind of know them sort of somehow. And they kind of stay around because, chess is only so big. So chess is a big part of my social identity too for many years. But this would have been a very different conversation back, before I moved to Labrador, because although I still play chess and, online, the internet is great for that. I can still play from here. I'm kind of like old for a chess player at this point. I've kind of been out of the scene for a little bit. There aren't, chess tournaments and things really going on, within 1,000 kilometers of me. So I try to get out to St. John's sometimes, and there's a wonderful community there, and I connect with them. but that's sort of, I guess, my relationship with chess these days is I'm a bit of a hobbyist. I love the game. I love to follow the game. I love talking about the game with people. I love playing it. But it's not, as I kind of once was my entire life, was chess. Mm.
So, I mean, it's a game of strategy, right? It's a game of being
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
think about your opponent, how they're going to play their next moves, their next so many moves. I don't know a lot about chess, by the way. I did love the movie The Queen's Gambit,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? It was amazing. Loved it. But when we think about sports and we think about how sports are genderedized and what they look like, I mean, for you as a person who's transgender, like what does that look like when it comes to rules within sports and the obstacles, barriers that you have to overcome, unfortunately?
Well, I kind of speak, I guess, from a position of privilege with respect to gender in chess, in the sense that I transitioned as an adult after moving to Labrador. So I didn't experience barriers in the most direct ways for for a long time. Of course, as you'll know, anyone pre-transition is still experiencing a lot of barriers, whether they know it or not. But in chess, I didn't directly experience any kind of a gender barrier in a conscious way until relatively recently. But I was here and still playing competitively and keeping up my game, but not really advancing it in particular, but just sort of staying involved. And I was contacted by the Chess Federation of Canada, who said, we know that you transitioned a couple of years ago, and we'd like to welcome you to the women's team if you're available to play, because we're looking for more players, and your rating and your playing strength would qualify you. So we'd be happy if you would join the team. And it wasn't really something I'd ever considered sort of doing. I don't know. I didn't really want to. It didn't really occur to me to forward myself in that way. So I felt very welcomed and felt, it was sort of something I almost had to do. I mean, of course, I'd want to. I mean, why wouldn't I want to represent Canada playing chess? But also, it was kind of, it felt like, yeah, I got to do this. So I did. So my experience as an adult too has been that the chess community has been very welcoming within Canada, and events. Normally you play chess. I mean, it's not gendered. Like most tournaments you go to, there's of course a lot of gendered aspects to any social interaction, but like it's not segregated by gender,
Right.
unless it's in either a world championship cycle or national team sort of level, or youth events too. Like they'll have special girls events, but most of the time we're playing together. Yeah.
So what had happened with, were you stopped, I guess, from reading the article? I got the impression that you maybe stopped from playing in, I guess, like an international competition, or are there different rules for what happens?
Yeah. So basically, what happened earlier last year, so last summer, I was contacted by the New York Times, and they said, there's this new stuff about chess saying transgendered women are not going to be allowed to play on women's teams, and there are consequences for transgender men as well. And would you like to talk about this? We Googled you and found you were a transgender chess player. And I said, what? I don't know anything about this. So I agreed, and I ended up I had to quickly read up what was going on, and found out about, and ended up talking to them at their London office at like 5 a.m. or something. And so I heard about it from them, and then I wound up doing all kinds of media interviews. Favorite one, quick shout out to Pink News. That was kind of fun with Maggie over there. Yeah, so basically what happened is the International Chess Federation, which is called FIDE, just sort of arbitrarily, without public process or consultation, kind of out of nowhere, just released a new, I guess, news release or something, saying that it needed to consider what the rules should be around people who had changed gender markers on their FIDE registration. It didn't say anything about if you were transgender, but then registered as your gender in the first place. They were only concerned if you changed it, is my understanding. So they said they were going to introduce new rules. They were starting a up to 2 year process to review, which, okay, fine. But then they said, in the meantime, you can't play, which was the what? Maybe you release your decision after the review and not
Right.
play. So there was the Federation, Canadian Chess Federation, wrote a letter supporting and naming me in particular, but also just in general opposing the rule. And so did a lot, well, not naming me, but in general protesting the rule, so did a lot of national federations. And a number of prominent female players made comments. For the most part, the international chess playing community's top players and so on have been annoyingly quiet, but most of the major like social kind of bodies around chess are all, everybody basically seems to think Fiday's out to lunch with the rules. But there aren't a huge number of people who are at least visibly impacted, which is kind of the problem, because there may be hundreds of people who are impacted that we don't know about. But I think part of the reason that it's not maybe caused as big a fuss as maybe it could have is that I don't really know of any other transgender people who were playing in the Olympiad last time around, for instance. And I'm not exactly, a threat for the world title. So it doesn't make like a huge difference from a competitive standpoint. If I like to think I strengthen the Canadian team a little bit, but not like making a big difference. Like I'm nowhere near our strongest player or anything. So there hasn't been a big fuss. And I don't know what would happen if I actually tried to register, because I haven't actually, it's not like when you're on a team, you're playing all the time. It's like the team is made for each event.
Right.
So in between events, technically nobody's on the team, right? So we haven't registered for another event. So my understanding is that the Canadian Chess Federation says, sure, we don't care, you can register. But I don't know what would happen if I attempted that. So
when's the next event?
Well, there's one every 2 years is when the national team plays in the Olympiad. So there would be one this summer. I don't know if I'd qualify anyways, because like I said, I'm pretty, if they need somebody, I might. So I don't know how relevant it is. I don't know who the first person to actually test this. I don't know who that will be or where they'll be from or whether it'll be me. But I think mostly what will happen is people like me will play in national events, and then it'll be submitted for rating, and then the International Federation will either choose to overlook it or choose to object, and then we'll see how that is handled. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But a lot of national federations have said they're just going to let us play and see what happens.
My question is, well, why not?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, right. Good question. Chess is a little bit different than I say that chess is a little bit different than other sports, but maybe this is also true with other sports. Some people ask me in media interviews about like, why does chess need to be gender segregated? What are they saying? Are they saying women aren't good at chess, or they're saying women aren't smart, or something like this? And it's like, it's not, the performance or playing strength is not the only or even the primary consideration. Like the reason we want female spaces in the chess world is for recruitment and retention of female players.
Right.
So the purpose of having a female section, a women's section in chess is so that women will play in a space where we are not surrounded by like 95% plus of the other participants are men, with the social consequences that are attendant on that. So you can play with peers in a way that encourages more girls to play and more girls to continue playing as they grow older, and women. So it's more like the existence of women's sections is not, to protect women from playing with stronger players. It's to provide a safe and comfortable space in which to, develop socially and as within the chess world without, dealing with
Right.
some of the barriers that exist in open sections. So when you look at it that way, I mean, transgender people are, we really, really kind of need those spaces. So why we can't play? I mean, I guess it's kind of such an absurd position. You don't want to be the one to verbalize it, but it's that there's a worry that we endanger the safety and comfort and familiarity of those spaces for other female players.
Right.
Right.
So you kind of hit the nail on the head where I was getting at of creating safe spaces, right? So looking at how we create spaces for everyone, like, sports are for everyone that would choose to play them. Especially chess. It's one of those that I suggest that most people, if you're interested and learn how to play. I know there was a chess club in my high school growing up. What that looks like. We like strategy games at home. We play them, right? Settlers of Catan, you're probably familiar with the game. And, we like the strategy of what that looks like. But of course, I would agree, like creating safe spaces is important for people. I would wonder what would the different federations say if someone was non-binary, what that might look like. Like, so what does that, so what is that like for a person? Because I'll say ultimately we're people first. And, do we have to put the gender identity or gender in there? Like, can we play in a safe space? Is there a way of creating safe spaces within all sports, so that we could just be people and bring our athletic abilities or brains or, that position? Like, is there a way of doing that and not having these obstacles and barriers, like stripping away the gender, having people's gender identities and just being able to, that camaraderie, being able to play, being able to enjoy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say my experience in chess in Canada is that we do mostly have that. In the sense that just chess communities, I mean, chess is different from other sports in the sense that there's an open section and a women's section. It's not a men's section and a women's section. So the open section from, a systemic, official perspective is gender neutral. It is, sort of open to everyone. I guess the barriers and obstacles that exist there are ones that come from, society more generally. Like they're not particular or unique to chess. It's just that if you have an activity that, the people self-selecting to play in the activity are overwhelmingly male identifying people, then it just creates a certain social dynamic in that space. So absolutely, I think it's important to think about how can that space, regardless of who chooses to play in it, be welcoming and safe. I mean, that's the most important fundamental question. But like the proximal question from the point of view of people making policy decisions about chess is it's like, I think they sort of feel that they can't really address that, so they just kind of have to deal with the people that they have, and the social environment that we have. But anyway, I'm rambling. I think you're much wiser about this. I'll listen to what you have to say on that one.
No, I mean, I just kind of wonder because, I have these discussions a lot with different organizations, not necessarily around sport, but around, other things within workplaces of just, so I always like lean heavy on the why. Like, go into your why with this. Like, so why is it that, organization or a federation might be opposed to something? Like, what's the ultimate why? If it's creating safe spaces, we know as, gender diverse folks that we're looking for safety more than most people, to be honest. Because we haven't always found it sometimes within work lives, within personal lives. And we know all about the safe spaces because, we want to be safe and we want to be able to live our authentic selves, that whole piece, right? What that looks like. So, I would say to any federation, to anyone listening, like, think about your why. Like, why, like, ask people, like, why did you want to play chess? Like, what was that passion? Because every single chess player, every single hockey player, every single whatever that is player, we all start because we want that, we want to feel challenged. We want to build our strengths. It's camaraderie, that sports, being able to be a part of something and be able to challenge yourselves. Like, it's all those different reasons. So by putting barriers in place that we already have, it's not helping.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely. Yeah. I guess I responded in the way I did because when people have talked to me about chess and these rules beforehand, often they've said there is a women's section. That's a symptom of the problem. You've introduced gender rules into chess. If you didn't have a women's section, none of this would be a problem. Just get rid of it and everybody can play together. And that's a knee-jerk response that on some level makes sense because you want to take segregation out, you want to remove those things. But my thing is that was put there specifically to provide a safe space, and it's limited in the sense that, at the time, the people who put that into place were thinking about, women was the catchment that they used. So maybe that can be expanded, reimagined, or reinterpreted and re-understood, or somehow so that it serves the function of providing safety that it was intended to serve. But in some ways, abolishing the separation, I think the consequence would be, many fewer women and girls choosing to play, and gender diverse people in general. The other thing that I think really needs to be stressed in the chess example, and which is different from most sporting examples, is that this isn't in day-to-day play. Like when you're talking, you say hockey, for instance, they're kind of co-ed teams up to a certain age, and then you're either on the boys team or the girls team, and then you have that's sort of forcing a choice of participation on people or maybe it's not a choice, but it's creating something at a much earlier stage and a much more sort of I guess lower playing level stage than happens in chess. Like in chess, I could just keep playing in tournaments around all of Canada or around the world. There's only some events that are actually I would be excluded from by this rule. So it's not quite as so I guess it's a bit of a different situation than you'd see in swimming or hockey or cycling or something. And part of the other reason I mentioned that comparison is that the Chess Federation, without really ever explaining its logic or process, they did allude to recent decisions, or at the time recent decisions by swimming and cycling. And they were saying that we're trying to follow what other athletic federations are doing, which struck me as part of the problem when you're instituting anything about safeties. You don't follow what other people are doing. You look at the needs of your particular people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's how we've gotten into a lot of different I think poor decisions around things, is when we followed what someone else was doing. To be honest, we didn't take the research, look at your participants, do some benchmarking, have some conversations about how people are feeling about this, kind of get a pulse, as opposed to following what other federations are doing. Just nonsensical, I would suggest. But who am I, right?
I would say you are somebody who knows quite a lot about this, is who you are.
So, but looking at it, it's just, I agree what you're saying, that, there is a place that, women want to feel safe. Ultimately, we want to feel safe. I think all persons want to feel safe, but I guess as, women identify that, we've come up against obstacles, we've come up against safety mechanisms, and, I'm always going to say, having, friends who are non-binary and transgenders, I welcome you into any space I'm in, because, it's like we all, as women identify, we face these, and having these conversations I think are important so people understand where we're coming from as people, and what this looks like for us in workplaces. And we have normal lives, we have friends, we have families, we love, all these robust things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I thank you for that. And I feel that is, again speaking from the position of privilege, but my experience over the last 3 years has been that most people talk and act and behave the way that you have just described, or have towards me at least. In most of the spaces in which I've entered, I felt that it doesn't need to be a thing, and it kind of, in the spaces where I feel safe, it kind of just doesn't. It doesn't come up, and it's not that it doesn't come up because it's taboo or something. It's like, you're here, great. Like, hi,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're Morgan. And that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it should be in all workplaces. And I wish that's the way it was. If it was, to be honest, I wouldn't have a job, which I'd be completely great with. Because a lot of the conversations I have around it's inclusion and exclusion, privilege, it's around, how are we welcoming people within organizations? And some organizations are doing amazingly well, and others not so much because, do they have a gender neutral washroom? Do they have places and spaces where people can feel safe? Just, a bathroom break, just
Yeah.
the human beings looking at that.
Yeah. I don't know if this is like an oddly specific thing. You mentioned the washrooms. Everybody wants to talk about washrooms all the time. And there's one thing I've found, there's a lot of gender neutral washrooms that are appearing all over the place, which is, fantastic. Have you seen these ones where they have a sign that's got like the picture, the stick figures, and then it's got like a whole bunch of other pictures, and it's trying to like hammer home the point that anybody is welcome here. So then it's got like aliens and monsters and
They're
all.
awful.
Thank you.
They're awful.
I've been in this conversation with so many people, and they're all like, "Yeah, it's making a point. Everybody's welcome." I'm like, "Oh my God,
No,
you're
it's
trying
not.
to be inclusive by going the exact opposite way and calling us
They're
monsters."
they're absolutely terrible.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and with organizations, I actually do recommendations of signs, and it's none of those, right?
All right, thank you.
And I say that gender neutral, it can be from a person that might be just shy when it comes to bathroom functions. It could be a mother who's nursing, right? A child, or a person who's nursing a child. It's like, it can be any of those things. It doesn't have to be someone who's part of the transgender, non-binary, 2S LGBTQIA community. It can be for anyone. So, but people always get the thought process, oh, it's just for, the queer community. It's just, no, it's not. It's for literally anyone. And it's usually a space as well for anyone who might have a disability, because, or you might have a change table for an adult or a baby. Like, there's so many different ways that gender neutral washrooms are for. They're for everyone, but that signage to me is just offensive, like just nonsensical. Whoever came up with it, just like, come on, folks, like we can do better than that. Right.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. I've had clients that showed me the signage. I'm like, dear God, please do not put this on your washroom door. We did not do work together if you're putting this on your washroom door, right? It's just, that's not inviting, right? So just, I think people are trying, but it goes too far to the other side, like you said. Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about you publishing, consulting. This is exciting world. I want you to show us the text, that book that you just showed us at the beginning, because we didn't all get to see the fabulous writing on the front of that.
Yeah, so this book is by Robin McGraw, A Reader's Guide to Labrador, or Labrador, A Reader's Guide. This is the second book that we published through Brack and Brine, which is our company, Labrador-based commercial publisher here in Goose Bay. And Robin basically has been reviewing, commenting on Labrador books for like 25 years. And this is a collection of reviews and essays and some original work that talking all about Labrador books. Because we're really happy it's one of our first books, because like Labrador culture and Labrador documentary heritage is kind of our kind of our thing, right? I'm a student of Labrador literature through my PhD, but also we've been working on Labrador records. And Mark is a real film buff sort of guy too. And yeah, so we're just really excited to work with Robin, and she's a friend, and she's fantastic. She's also a really celebrated author. That's like her 25th book. So
Oh, wow.
we're very privileged to have it, and it's a fantastic read. Definitely check it out. The first one we did last year was this one. We wrote it ourselves, so I don't know if it really counts as, commercially published, but we wrote it and published it. And this is a history of Labrador cinema. So it's all, more of a
Amazing.
picture, sort of coffee table kind of book.
Wow.
But it's a history of Labrador film, and there's a lot more of it than people realize. There are, 120 years of it. And yeah, those are our books. And we've got a lot more in the pipeline, but those are the ones that have been printed so far, and we're super excited. I don't want to tip our hands exactly yet because things aren't finalized and so on, but we've got some exciting Labrador authors who expressed interest and are in various stages of the.
Okay. So if someone wants to write a book on whatever that might be, they can, have
Yeah.
a look and connect in with yourself or Mark and have a conversation about what that might look like, logistics and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. brackandbrine.com.
Fantastic. Absolutely. So a little bit more about how did you become a consultant? Like what got you into the business of books, got you into,
Sure.
your dissertation about Labrador literature, coming from Ontario and your dissertation on Labrador literature, that's, for
Yeah.
me, that's a big jump, or maybe it's not, given your background.
Well, that sort of a jump is pretty common in the sense that a lot of times people from outside, as we say here, and we're going to say on the mainland because we are on the mainland, but people from outside will be interested in Labrador and then come here. Mine was a bit of a different case where I had already been living here for, I think, 8 years. And I was working for the university, teaching, running a library and so on. And it was put to me that, maybe you should be doing your PhD. I mean, why not? And the university supported continuing education. And since I was working for them anyway, so I said, yeah, I'll do a PhD. I mean, I kind of have unfinished business in academia anyway. And I'm a literature scholar. I was a literature scholar. I guess I still am. That was kind of my thing. And so it was just kind of a no-brainer that what literature do you study? I ran the Labrador Institute Library, as it was called at the time. I mean, I'm literally surrounded by Labrador books all day. I help people find Labrador books. I know more about Labrador books than I know about any other books. And I probably know as much about Labrador books as anybody else who's likely to write a PhD dissertation on them anywhere does. I won't say anybody because there are some really voracious readers in Labrador who have read like unbelievable quantities of Labrador books. So I won't compete with them. But it was kind of a position where, like, why would I write about anything else? It would be irresponsible. And this is my home, and that's the books that are being written around me. So that's what I'll study. And I think I feel like even from an inclusive perspective, I think it's not to say that's the only way you can do things, but I feel like there's an important distinction between coming to a place in order to study people and their culture, and coming to a place, becoming a part of that place, and a number of years later, studying it because it's your place rather than coming there for that. I think it changes the way that it changes the kinds of questions you ask and your approaches to answering them. I mean, we also need people from outside, observing us from outside, but we seem to have disproportionately a lot of them. So anyway, that's how I got into the PhD on Labrador literature. And then I left the university after a while. I was part of it was, I was transitioning. There was a period of mental health turbulence that often accompanies that, or did for me anyway. And also just, I'm turning 40 next year, so I'm kind of at this point where you're reassessing your life and so on. And the big institutional environment is not necessarily for me. I mean, people there are great. We work with them all the time. We're constantly working with the university, both locally and provincially. But I kind of just needed to retreat a bit. And so I did that. And Mark had been a friend for years. And I just was kind kind of project by project just was like, well, I got to keep doing something. I mean, first of all, I need to earn some money, but also I just like, this is what I do this is what I do. I mean, I got to keep doing it. I gotta keep reading my Labrador books, writing about Labrador and helping with archives and so on. And then you kind of get back into it and you realize that you're doing all the same things that you used to have a job to do. So you think, well, maybe there might be some way to, we are delivering some value. So maybe somebody might want this value, would be willing to compensate us for it so we can keep doing it. And then you find out one day that you're a consultant, that's kind of how it happened. And it feels really good to be, I used to think, I kind of considered consultant to be a bit of a, I don't want to say dirty word, but it was kind of like I was a little bit skeptical, maybe just because it would seem sort of mercenary. But now that I'm doing it, and I mean, it can be that way, but now that I'm doing it, I find there's even a certain kind of like ethical freedom involved in, like, for instance, if I do something for, if we do a project for an Indigenous organization, it's because they identified a project. They went out and said, we want somebody to do this. They found us, they hired us to do it, and we're doing exactly what they wanted us to do. So it's like it's like we're roofers. They wanted a roof, so we're putting a roof. Like there's no complexity from an ethical perspective. I mean, there is in how we carry out the work, because, a lot of this there's a lot of trust and relationship building and so on. So not to say this is completely not unrelated to ethics, but I just mean, like, in terms of the basic foundation of the relationship, there's a certain clarity in being hired to do something that is sort of refreshing, I find, on a project by project basis, that when you work for an institution where you're a sort of public sector and you have a mandate to generate programs, a lot of the time it requires real sort of wisdom and personal, like, integrity to, like, develop programs with people in consultation and not be like, I think this is a good idea, what do you think? And then you're imposing this burden of what they think. And I found that, like, I was just in a personal space where I wasn't maybe totally as able to live up to that as I wanted to be. And now it's like, I'm more like, okay, tell me what you want. Or if you want something. If you don't even want anything, that's fine too. I've got lots of clients, I'll do something for them instead, So that's why we're consultants, and we feel that we feel like we're doing good work at the end of the day, and it feels good.
Absolutely. What's your favorite part of living in Labrador?
My favorite part? Well, I'm going to say my daughter, because I'm a parent. She's Labradorian born and raised. But yeah, I mean, that has to be the answer in any community. I mean, it's friends and family. I'm really close with my daughter's mom and her family, and so many friends here and extended family and so on. It's this is home for that reason. It hasn't always been, and it may not always be, but for now and for years to come, this is my home, right? And I mean, I give the same answer if you'd asked me about chess, or if you'd asked me about archive, what do I like most about the archive community, or what do I love most about my PhD studies, or any of those things. It's if your answer isn't the people, then you're probably maybe should reconsider whether you're in the right place. It's mine. At least that's true for me.
Definitely. I mean, family, friends, it's the draw. I think that's why we live on islands, to be honest. I think, that's the big reason I live where I live is my wife, my family, my parents, my friends, that home base. It's I've heard some speakers talk about the sense of home and the calling of home, and it's home. It's where you feel the most comfortable and supported, and I can just be me. It's that whole sense of that safety factor, that comfort factor. So yeah.
And it's also, like, even beyond the people that we know directly that are, like I said, family and friends. It's also, I was just thinking as you were talking, it's like beyond that, it's like the people that we respect who are also in this space, where it's just like you see them also doing things that resonate with you, and you kind of connect with them or admire them from, from a distance, but somehow there's a recognition between you and them that it's just like, there are cool things going on here. People are doing cool things, even if they're not in my circle, even if I don't know them. Like, it's like, you just feel like, okay, these are people I want to share a world with these people. So I want to be here.
Definitely. That's why I was really grateful when Will said, you have to connect in with Morgan, right? Like I want to share space. I want to get to know stories, history, what that looks like. Because I think being parts of different communities that we associate with, that we're connected and drawn to each other and what that looks like. You might be in Labrador, but and I'm on the island in Newfoundland, but I think there's still a draw to hear people's stories and to hear the fantastic work, folks are doing, like what that looks like with you, Mark, what that looks like with, because I didn't know you existed and what this looked like. So now that, people are looking for a fantastic consultant locally, they're looking to publish, like, why wouldn't we? Like, to me, it's that local draw of connectedness. So if folks want to connect in with you, what's the best way that they can connect in and see how things are?
Yeah, well, in this world of internet, I'm just going to point people to the website and to say, but yeah, brackandbrine.com. So maybe you can put a link under the. I don't know if you do that, but BRACKANDBRINE.com.
Fantastic. It's been a blessing, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the podcast today. And any final words that you want to leave us with?
No, just thanks very much, and keep doing what you're doing. This is great to have this opportunity. And I've seen some of your other podcasts. I saw Charlie Murphy, for instance, and it's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for being with us today. Comment below, subscribe, connect with me at Stephanie@diversitynl.com or on LinkedIn. Be the change.